Well, ladies and gentlemen, the fallout from the bombshell announcement from Vince McMahon is still being felt. NXT is back. That's right, the black and gold brand is back on the air, and the reception from the WWE Universe has been exceptional. But how does this affect the WWE as a whole? What are the changes? When does NXT start? Who is on the roster? Does this affect SmackDown and Raw? Well, we have all the answers on this, the state of the universe. We're going to start off with Raw and SmackDown and the new look of both of these shows. It's a new coat of paint for the red and blue brands with fresh logos, and there will be brand new staging added for both shows as well. This comes as a welcome change, and it was seen as a necessary change given the new competition added by the announcement of NXT. Both general managers of Raw and SmackDown approved their respective logos just this afternoon, and the change has been made effective immediately. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is only the beginning, because we have seen swift and major changes to the championship picture on both Raw and SmackDown. Vince McMahon has stated that as of right now, the European Championship and the TV Championship have been dissolved. The current champions will be compensated with future opportunities, and there is a hell of a lot more on that subject in just a little bit. Another change that Mr. McMahon has implemented is that there will now be women's championships and tag team championships on all three brands. That's right, there will now be women's divisions on each individual brand, as well as tag team divisions on each individual brand. So in simplified terms, Raw has its own women's champion, Raw has its own tag team champions, SmackDown has its own women's champion, and SmackDown has its own tag team champions, and the same goes for NXT. And Vince McMahon released this statement regarding this subject. As an entity, we want every athlete on the roster the chance to showcase their talent and to get as much competition as possible. Women and tag teams will now have exclusive homes on each brand, and all negotiations on which talent goes to which roster will all be completed behind closed doors and revealed by the general managers on the first episodes of Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, which will all come after Survivor Series. As for the women's power rankings, this will still be in effect across all three brands individually, and will still determine which female talent is eligible for championship matches. So I can hear you asking the question, how does this affect the women's championship match at Survivor Series between Shayna Baszler and Stephanie McMahon's hand-picked opponent? Well, it's really simple. The winner of that match has the freedom to choose whichever brand they want to represent. So if Shayna Baszler is to retain the championship, she then has the choice to go to Raw, SmackDown, or even NXT to be the champion of that brand. So the freedom of choice and a huge decision to make for either woman. It will be the exact same story for the Tag Team Championship match at Survivor Series as well, when the Revival does battle with Sanity. The winner of that match gets to pick their poison. They get to choose the brand that they will be tag team champions of in the future at the conclusion of the Survivor Series. So 3 separate women's divisions, 3 separate tag team divisions. The women's power rankings remain and will be implemented on each brand, so a more condensed roster situation for the women's and tag team divisions. So that means more opportunity to see your favorite stars do what they do best. It can only be a good thing for all 3 shows. And speaking of all 3 shows, we now need to address how all 3 shows will potentially refresh their rosters in the future. As always, the free agency market is constantly open, and all 3 brands are welcome to sign any free agents they feel. But when it comes to trying to poach other superstars from other rosters, well, the trade period is going to be pivotal. But with more shows, must come more movement. So therefore, instead of the usual 2 trade periods per year that would usually come after WrestleMania and SummerSlam, there will now be 4. Each trade period will take place after the flagship pay-per-view events Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, and SummerSlam. The trade periods will run for 2 weeks instead of the usual 4 weeks, and only superstars who hold championships will be exempt from being traded. All other superstars will be eligible for trade. So this allows all 3 brands 4 opportunities in a calendar year to bring in new stars. Interesting times ahead, indeed. So now we know the title situations, we know who is eligible for potential trades, and we're familiar with Raw and SmackDown. Now, let's get to know a little bit about NXT. We'll start with how the roster will be fleshed out. Mr. McMahon has come up with a system where it leaves the decision largely to the superstars themselves. But as always, the buck will stop with the boss. Over the coming days, WWE superstars from both Raw and SmackDown, and also the free agency market, will get the opportunity to nominate for a spot on the NXT roster. There will be no trade or exchange of any form of currency for any of these superstars who nominate for a switch. All superstars who nominate for a move will do so via Vince McMahon himself, and subsequently, all moves are subject to approval from the chairman. Of course, in the interest of balance, not all superstars will be granted their request to move, and current champions are not eligible to nominate for a move. It is in all brands' interest to keep star power on all shows to maintain the integrity of their brand, and also to maintain the fierce competition on all shows that the WWE Universe has grown accustomed to. NXT will be implored by Vince McMahon, as we've mentioned previously, to scour the free agency market for talent as well. The general manager of NXT is yet to be assigned, but Mr. McMahon has assured the WWE Universe that it will be in place before the return show that will take place the week after Survivor Series. So who would you like to see nominate for NXT from SmackDown and Raw? Is this the perfect opportunity for superstars who are struggling to capture the spotlight on the red and blue brand to make the switch? Let me know in the comments below. So now we know how we're going to flesh out the roster, but what are we all fighting for? That is the big question. So now we move on to championships. We've already alluded to the fact that there will be tag team and women's championships on NXT and also on Raw and SmackDown. Tag team division, in Vince McMahon's own words, he says it will be the most innovative we have seen in recent memory. McMahon wants fluidity in the tag team division and wants all tag team wrestling in the WWE to go up a level with a more condensed talent pool on all 3 brands. The championship's future will be decided on the first episode of NXT after the Survivor Series, so make sure you tune in. Next up, as we already alluded to, is the coveted Women's Championship, and this stunning title is what all the women and the incredible athletes in the women's division will be vying for. Of course, as we found out earlier, the way we're going to determine number 1 contenders and certain title opportunities for the women will be via the Women's Power Rankings, which will be revealed who is on top of it once the rosters are decided. And yes, previous records on Raw and SmackDown will count towards potential title opportunities. So tune into the very first episode return of NXT to find out just who is on the power rankings and just who is going to be vying for this coveted championship. So next up is the North American Championship. This beautifully newly minted championship is the gateway to the major prize and will be a pivotal step in many superstars' progress towards the top of NXT. McMahon has assured the WWE Universe that this championship, much like its counterparts in the Intercontinental and United States Championships, will yield some of the hottest competition and some of the best matches on the brand. So, here is where it gets very interesting. We told you that Matt Riddle and Pete Dunne were going to be rewarded for their efforts as European and TV champion. Vince McMahon discussed with Pete Dunne and discussed with Matt Riddle the potential of those two gentlemen heading to NXT. But during those discussions, Drew Gulak and Shelton Benjamin put their hands up and said, hey, what if we were going to win that match? Where would our reward be? So this is what Vince McMahon has come up with. At Survivor Series on the pre-show, Pete Dunne was scheduled to face Drew Gulak for the European Championship, but now, instead, Pete Dunne will fight Drew Gulak in a match that is for a shot at the North American Championship on the return episode of NXT. And that is the same case for Matt Riddle and Shelton Benjamin with their match that was for the now dissolved TV Championship. So it'll be Matt Riddle versus Shelton Benjamin, and it will be Pete Dunne versus Drew Gulak, and the winner of both of those matches will then face off in the main event of the return episode of NXT for the North American Championship. So that locks in at least 2 of the 4 of these men to be guaranteed to be on the NXT roster. And I tell you what, in my opinion, that is about as good of a start as NXT could hope for, as all 4 of these men are very capable of taking that brand by storm. Now, the final championship on NXT we're going to talk about is the top prize for the male athletes. That is, of course, the NXT Championship. This is what it's all about for the men on the roster, and is the reason every single male competitor will step into the ring. This championship will, along with the Women's Championship, be the centerpiece of the show and will take top billing at all of the major events. Vince McMahon has confirmed that the general manager of NXT will open the first episode of the Black and Gold brand with a huge announcement regarding how we're going to crown a brand new NXT champion. This is sure to create a hell of a lot of tension and competition within the ranks of NXT, and with a wide open slather, I dare say there will be a number of Raw and SmackDown superstars that will have one eye on potentially switching to then get an opportunity at the top prize on the hot new brand. So we've talked about the potential roster, we've talked about the championships, but when will these athletes be doing battle? We're going to have a look at the major events you can mark down on your calendar for the future. These will be the showcase events for NXT superstars to elevate their games to the next level. The infamous NXT TakeOver events. So when are they going to take place? Well, it's very simple. There will just be 4 TakeOver events each calendar year. And these will take on extra impetus considering there is so few in comparison to the Raw and SmackDown branded pay-per-views. And the schedule will run as follows. These major events will run in between the Raw and SmackDown major events to spread out the huge pay-per-views throughout the year. Takeovers will indeed take place in conjunction with No Way Out, with Night of Champions, with Unforgiven, and with Vengeance pay-per-views. That's right, the first Takeover event will take place just 4 weeks after the Survivor Series, so you don't have to wait very long to see the NXT superstars do battle on the big stage. There will also be NXT involvement on the big 4 pay-per-views like WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, Survivor Series and SummerSlam, with various NXT championships getting spots on these major pay-per-views for Raw and SmackDown. NXT is no longer a spot for development, ladies and gentlemen. The future is now, and the future is bright. So let me know in the comments below, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Are you ready for SmackDown, Raw, and NXT? Well, you should be, because it is only just getting started. Stay tuned for more updates as they come to hand, and for Murph's YT13, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.